Reminder to our listeners, today's episode is presented by Spotify. Podcasts and music for every mood. I love podcasts, you love podcasts. Major League Baseball players love podcasts. For instance, I was down at Rogers Center recently chatting with Derek Holland, the veteran left-hander on the San Francisco Giants. He actually happens to host a podcast, and he's a big fan of the Joe Rogan podcast, the bi-weekly recap of which is entitled The Joe Rogan Experience, is available on Spotify. Did you imagine in 2001 that the host of Fear Factor would one day host the world's most popular podcast?
I did actually foresee that. I wrote it down, and it's weird, too, because I don't think podcasts existed back then.
We couldn't even conceptualize the actual form itself.
Yeah, I just thought, recorded radio would really take off, and delivering it straight to your phone would be a thing. No, yeah, Joe Rogan hosting it is crazy.
And
it's especially wild that how prolific these episodes are. They're some of them are 3 hours long. It's insane how long these are, and in-depth conversations with Elon Musk was on.
Yeah, he's had an interesting coterie of guests all across the political spectrum. But I mean, maybe this is sort of the logical ascent point of Joe Rogan's career, because it's been a very eclectic career. He was an aspiring kickboxer who was nudged into stand-up comedy, became an unexpected, improbable sitcom star on news radio, ends up becoming one of the most prominent faces in mixed martial arts, and now he's the world's most recognizable podcaster.
It's true. He looks alarmingly like Dana White, too, which I always found funny.
Well, it's the cartoonish, musculature, although Dana White isn't that muscular. He's just husky and the bald head.
Dana White will fight you.
I would not want that at all.
I've been listening to Michael Lewis's new podcast, Against the Rules, and it is excellent. It's about the decline of the modern referee, which it's just been amazing. The first episode was all about NBA and how the NBA ref is just under fire, and I like the way that ties into baseball, at least in my head, that a lot of people are pushing for robot umpires now, and to me that undermines the value of the actual umpire staff and the value of pitch framing as well. But I don't know, it's really, really good. And Lewis is routinely one of the best storytellers I think I've ever encountered. As I get older, I realize more and more that Moneyball is more of a story and less of a book on baseball analysis.
If Steven Soderbergh is adapting it into a film, it's a story. There's narrative there.
Yeah. And he's just so good at it. He turns these normally business stories, like The Big Short, into fantastic stories and readable to people that have no business background. I have no business background. My dad's a financial advisor, or was before he retired, and
he played no role in the financial collapse from a
not.
decade and a half ago, right?
He did not.
Well, that's reassuring.
Luckily, Canada doesn't have the subprime mortgage
crisis.
But America does, and that was wild. It is wild, that story. Anyways, check out Against the Rules on Spotify podcasts. It's awesome.
There you go. So Mike Fiers was not the only player to make history this week, because Robinson Cano, the New York Mets second baseman, recorded his 2500 career hit on Tuesday evening, becoming only the third active player to do so, alongside a couple of future first ballot Hall of Famers in Miguel Cabrera and Albert Pujols. Interestingly, his 2500 hit came off of Cal Quantrill, the San Diego Padres rookie, and the son of Paul Quantrill, who was briefly Cano's teammate in 2005 with the New York Yankees. So that's an interesting little factoid. Cano needs 15 hits now to surpass Joe Morgan on the all-time hits list. When does Cano become the greatest second baseman of all time in your estimation? Because as far as I see it, in terms of post-integration second baseman, it's him and Morgan. And Morgan played for 22 years and accrued 30 more wins above replacement than Cano currently has. But Cano remains under contract for another 5 years, and He was off to a slow start in 2019, but he has since rebounded over his last 3 weeks or so. He's had an OPS above 900. Can he overtake Morgan as sort of the best modern-day second baseman of all time?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a good question for multiple reasons, because then you're talking about like when baseball starts to you, because, post-integration is where we're drawing the line, and like Rogers Hornsby is unassailably probably the best second baseman of all time, and we're never going to see a better second baseman than that.
Like, we've never seen a second baseman put up a career OPS of even 900, and Hornsby's is over 1,000.
Yeah, he's one of like 7 players to retire with 1,000 OPS or higher. It's crazy how good he was. But yeah, this is when we're talking about the baseball Cano is playing. Hornsby didn't play this baseball like that. It's a completely different game, in my opinion. And the fact that, we get to talk about eras is one thing, but in my opinion, we're talking about a completely different game. It's what Hornsby played is not baseball to the modern baseball fan. And
his career started in 1915, so that was still the dead ball era, right?
Yeah.
Half the league had polio, at least, when he debuted. At least.
I suppose. Sure.
Those are unofficial stats.
Yeah. But yeah, so we're not talking about Hornsby, but I think when I saw that he was 15 hits away from Joe Morgan, I was kind of alarmed and thought that meant definitely he was within striking distance of becoming the best second baseman of all time, or next to Hornsby. But the more I looked at it, the more I'm like underappreciating even Chase Utley at that point. Like, Chase Utley was really, really good at baseball.
Insanely good.
Yeah, and should probably be a first ballot Hall of Famer.
I think he will be.
And I don't know if Cano will get that treatment, but obviously he has.
That's complicated by his history of performance-enhancing drug use.
Exactly.
And he could be a seminal case in a sense, because, there's unequivocally, based on the numbers, he's a Hall of Famer, first ballot Hall of Famer. But he tested positive, and you look at other guys who had unassailably brilliant careers, like Manny Ramirez, who tested positive. Manny Ramirez tested positive 3 times. He appeared on the ballot for the first time in 2017. He got like 23.8% of the vote and hasn't increased in the subsequent 2 years. This past year, he got 22.8%. So I wonder if by the time Cano retires and then ultimately becomes eligible, attitudes towards players who use performance-enhancing drugs and tested positive for them will have softened. But I feel like there's potential here for him to be a watershed case in that respect.
Yeah, it's so far in the future. Yeah. We're assuming that Cano plays, at least until he's 39. So that's kind of 4 seasons, maybe 3. And so then we're looking at 8 years minimum before he's on a ballot. And at that point, we'll have probably seen A-Rod get into the Hall.
Maybe.
I don't know. Like, I'm of the opinion that the new ballot havers, like the folks that are getting the ballot now, and the fact that the old guard is kind of losing their ballot under the new rules, will eventually elect A-Rod, and it won't take that long, in my opinion. A-Rod has done such a good, positive PR job for himself post,
truly a clinic in image rehabilitation.
Yeah, it's truly remarkable, and I think the Hall would want to capitalize on A-Rod, speaking at Cooperstown and stuff like that. Like,
but that's not up to the Hall. That's up to the voters.
It's true. Yeah.
And just as a reminder, Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds are not yet in the Hall of Fame, and neither eclipsed 60% in voting this year.
Yeah, but Barry Bonds was combative, and so was Clemens with the media. And, A-Rod was too, but A-Rod has done a better job post-playing career at, becoming the media. So I honestly think, I'll say it now, A-Rod is in the Hall before Cano retires.
Wow.
Or before Cano is eligible for the Hall.
The player who served the longest suspension in baseball history for performance-enhancing drug use.
Yeah.
That would set a seismic precedent for sure, but I feel like other things need to happen before that happens.
Yeah,
Bonds never tested positive,
it's true.
and he remains unenshrined.
But he was such a jerk to some of the media, right? Like he was. People hated Bonds.
People hated A-Rod.
Yeah, that's true.
People despised A-Rod.
Yeah.
The hatred for A-Rod was transcendent. Like, I feel like Bonds had a specific reputation with the media, and there was a real animosity there, but I don't think fans loathe Barry Bonds as profoundly as they loathe Alex Rodriguez.
Yeah, there's always something to be said for the player. I don't like this criticism, but it definitely happens that players take huge paydays and they earn criticism for doing so. And A-Rod did that with the Rangers, and then he did it again with the Yankees. And it's like a double whammy. If you are chasing the big payday, that's one. If you're chasing the big payday with the Yankees specifically, that's two. And yeah, like nobody likes to cheer for the rich guy on the Yankees. Nobody likes that guy.
Yeah. But coming back to it, how does Cano displace Joe Morgan as the best modern day second baseman? Can he do it?
I don't know. As you were pointing out pre-show, we dealt with Joe Morgan's peak was much, much better, and I do prefer peak over longevity, and Joe Morgan also has
he had
longevity.
Both. He had both.
So I don't know if it's
two-time MVP.
Yeah. That's second base. That's crazy.
Hard to do.
Yeah, I don't know if he can. And like one thing's a hit total, but
right.
Nobody cares about
It's
a hit
kind of
total.
it's kind of hollow.
Yeah, like the milestones are cool, but an overall hit total, I'm not judging a player on
No, of course
total
not.
hits.
As you shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Like, ultimately, I think Cano's going to have some peak caliber seasons from ages 36 upwards in order to realistically supplant Morgan.
Yeah.
But it's close. Like, it's really close.
Yeah. We're assuming he has, 3 more years. So I think he could overtake him, in my opinion. Like, and again, too, like you're talking about, Joe Morgan might not be, again, like the version of baseball that Joe Morgan played, not the version of baseball we see today. So,
yeah, I mean, I'm less inclined to cast aspersions or discredit the brand of baseball played in the 70s as opposed to the 20s.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, Joe Morgan wasn't facing left-handed relievers who threw 98.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
It's crazy how much baseball has changed and how it also hasn't changed at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird that those two things can be said
Coexist.
about baseball. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's weird. Also, another fun fact, you said Quantrill, Pujols, and Cabrera, Miggy, the only other hitters with more than 2,500 hits.
Active players.
Yeah, active players. Actually played against each other while Cano recorded his 2,500th. That's kind of cool.
No kidding.
Yeah. Yeah, the Tigers and Angels were playing against each other at the same time.
It was like a really rich but really washed convention.